In this episode, we talk about the findings of Chandrayaan-3. We also talk about Malayalam actor Minu Muneer alleging that she had faced sexual misconduct from various actors. But first, we talk about the newly introduced Unified Pension Scheme. Hi, I am Niharika Nanda, and you are listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. On 24th August, the Union Cabinet approved the Unified Pension Scheme, or the UPS, which will provide the government employees with assured pension after retirement. The scheme will be effective from 1st April 2025, according to the government's announcement. Before the UPS, the government had promulgated the National Pension System, or the NPS, which was popularly known as the New Pension Scheme. However, over the last couple of years, the scheme had witnessed a lot of criticism from the opposition, which had pointed out that the government employees were unhappy with the NPS. Prior to the NPS, there existed the Old Pension Scheme, or the OPS, which was scrapped about 2 decades back. But over the last couple of years, the opposition governments in many states had shifted to the OPS as they were against the NPS. To learn more about the Unified Pension Scheme, what it entails and how different it is from the NPS and the OPS, we have Indian Express's Harikishan Sharma joining us. Harikishan, can you tell us what is the Unified Pension Scheme and what all it entails?
So Niharika, the central government on August 24 approved this new pension scheme called Unified Pension Scheme. In short, it is called UPS. This is a new pension scheme. You know, the earlier pension scheme called NPS, National Pension System, which was introduced in 2004 and which is currently being implemented by center and states both for their employees. And, you know, there were opposition to that pension scheme and it became a poll issue also when the opposition raised this issue and they demanded restoration of the old pension scheme which was being implemented for the employees recruited before 2004. So this new Unified Pension Scheme that has been approved on August 24 has some very interesting features. And these features include assured family pension, assured minimum pension, inflation indexation, and some lump sum payment.
Right. And talking about pensions, what kind of an expenditure does the government do on the pensions of the government employees on an yearly basis?
So Niharika, government, when we say, if I give you an example, the central government spends roughly 2.3 lakh crore rupees per annum on their pension bill. In the current financial year also, if you look at the data, the government has provided even a higher amount for pension expenditure. In the current financial year, that is 2024-25, the government has allocated rupees 2,43,000 crore rupees for pension. So this is a huge bill. And if we talk about the state governments, the expenditure by the state government, say last year was well above 5 lakh crore rupees. So the state governments, their combined expenditure on pension in the last financial year, that is year 2023-24, it was rupees 5 lakh crore. So if you combined both the center and the state's expenditure, then the total expenditure comes out around rupees 7,50,000 crore in a year. So that is the amount the governments at center and in all the states spends on pension bill. So for instance, like center's budget is of about, say, rupees 45 lakh crore rupees budget. And out of that, roughly about 2.5 lakh crore is going towards pension expenditure. So you can see that they are spending at least, say, 5-6% of their budget or the overall budget on the pension expenditure. And if you look at the proportion of this pension bill to the revenue which the government earns, the amount which the government earns through taxes and through levies, different kind of levies and fees, then the amount is even higher. Then this proportion is even higher.
And if we talk about the national pension system, how different was it from the Unified Pension Scheme and why was it introduced?
So this NPS, that is National Pension System, popularly known as New Pension Scheme, It was introduced for central government officials who are recruited by the central government from January 1st, 2004. And the reason for introduction of this scheme was, as I have told you, the pension bill of the government is increasing over the years. So at that time, a need was felt that there should be a defined contributory scheme that can bring a new system in which employees are paying for their post-retirement planning, for their post-retirement benefits. So they introduced this system in 2004 in which employees were required to pay 10% of their basic salary. And the government also contributed the same amount, 10% of the basic salary plus DA. This was felt at that time that the old pension scheme, we know that the old pension scheme was becoming, physically very challenging for the government because you have to allocate a big amount of your budget for the pension liabilities. And these are the committed liabilities which every government has to make these liabilities because you cannot do away with it overnight. So they introduced this new system in 2004. So this amount will go in a fund, pension fund, which is managed by a fund manager. And that fund manager will reinvest that amount and will give a return on this. And then when somebody gets superannuated or retired after completing his or her job, then that person will get pension depending on the size of that fund.
But then, Harikishan, why did the national pension system face such massive opposition?
When you say pension, it means you would get a guaranteed or assured amount after your retirement. But in NPS, it was not assured amount. It will all depend on the return you get on your contribution, which you are making over the years during your service and the contribution made by the government. So employees felt that suppose if they retired at a time and then they get less payments, less pension, then it will not be a good option for them. There is no guarantee how much pension you would get after completing of your service. So there was a kind of resentment among employees, and also then the issue became political. So then they demanded restoration of the old pension scheme. But meanwhile, this government, the NDA government, they formed a committee last year under the chairmanship of the then Finance Secretary, T.V. Somnathan, who is now Cabinet Secretary. And that committee came up with this idea of UPS, that is Unified Pension Scheme.
Now, coming back to the Unified Pension Scheme, can you talk to us about its features in a little more detail?
So, as I told you, Unified Pension Scheme has 5 basic features. So, one is assured pension. Under this, 50% of the average basic pay drawn over the last 12 months prior to superannuation for a minimum qualifying service of 25 years will be given as assured pension to employee. And the second is assured family pension. 60% of pension of the employee will be given to the dependent or to the family of that employee in case a retired employee dies. And there's also provision of assured minimum pension. If any government employee complete 10 years of his service, he would get an assured minimum pension of rupees 10,000 per month. And the fourth is inflation indexation. This means that the assured family pension and the assured minimum pension will be indexed to inflation. It means as the inflation will increase, the amount of pension will also increase. And the fifth is lump sum payment at superannuation in addition to gratuity. So, when a government employee retires, apart from pension, he gets gratuity. But there's also provision of, say, getting lump sum payment, some amount. And that amount will be 1/10 of monthly emoluments as on the date of superannuation for every completed 6 months of service. So this means that suppose if a government employee retires after completing 30 years in service, he would get 6 months his monthly emoluments as lump sum payment at the time of his retirement. So these are 5 basic features of the UPS.
And who all are eligible to entail this scheme?
So all the central government employees who joined the service after January 1st, 2004 and are subscriber of the National Pension Scheme can join the UPS, Unified Pension Scheme, and they can exercise this option only once. Once they join the UPS, they cannot go back to NPS. And also the new joinees, whoever join the central government in coming years, because this UPS will be implemented from April 1st, 2025. So this means that whoever join the central government after April 25, they can also become member of the UPS. They can also join the UPS. So this is a kind of voluntary option the government has given to employees. If they want to remain in the NPS, they can remain in the NPS. We have reported that government of Maharashtra has decided yesterday to join the UPS. It is the first state government to announce that it would join the UPS once it is implemented nationally. So roughly about 93 lakh employees comprising center and states both would be eligible to join the UPS. These are the existing employees. And apart from these serving employees, if somebody taken VRS or has retired before the date of announcement of this UPS scheme, they would also eligible to join the UPS. But for them, only those people would be eligible for joining the UPS who have completed at least 10 years of service. But their amount of pension would depend on their year in service. Suppose if somebody has completed 10 years, he would be eligible, but he would not get as much pension as the one who has completed 25 years. So the qualifying year of service is 25 years. So to get full pension under the UPS, you have to complete a service of 25 years.
And Harikishan, as far as the UPS is concerned, how will it be increasing the expenditure of the government?
So actually, according to the Cabinet Secretary who briefed the media on 24th August, on the day the UPS was announced, he said that the UPS would entail an additional expenditure of about 6,000 crore rupees in first year. This additional expenditure would keep changing every year. So this additional expenditure, he said, is because of one reason. That is, the government has decided to increase its contribution from 14% to 18.5%. This means that in the UPS, employee will contribute 10% of its basic pay plus DA, while the government would contribute 18.5% of the basic and DA. So DA is dearness allowance. So because of this increase, about 4.5 percentage point increase in the government's contribution, this UPS would entail a little bit higher spending by the government on pension. But we need to understand the context of this increase also. He said that this increase is because the government want to make sure that employees who superannuate or retire get their assured pension.
Right. And Harikishan, you had also mentioned the OPS or the old pension scheme. So can you share with us why was it scrapped?
So actually what happened, the pension expenditure is the committed liability of the government, be it central government or the state government. This means that the government has to allocate money for pension, whatever be the reason, because it cannot deny pension to its employees who are eligible to get it. So this committed liability was increasing over the years. And it was few thousand crore in 2002-2003. But now it is about rupees 2.5 lakh crore in 23-24. So you can imagine how much it increased over the period of 20 years. So there was a need felt to undertake pension reforms. This was the reason at that time the Atal Bihari Vajpayee government, NDA government, took a decision to implement National Pension Scheme in 2004. So the increasing pension liabilities was the only one reason.
Next, we talk about the findings of Chandrayaan-3. On 21st August, almost a year after Chandrayaan-3 landed on the moon, Indian scientists released their first findings. They have been published in the journal Nature. These findings have resulted from the studies carried out by one of the instruments of the rover module. The data was collected by the Alpha Particle X-ray Spectrometer or the APXS. The findings include an analysis of the composition of the topsoil in the moon's southern latitudes, new information about the elemental composition of the lunar surface, and more. To learn more about these findings and their significance, we have Indian Express's Sohini Ghosh joining us. Sohini, can you tell us what are the findings of the alpha particle X-ray spectrometer?
So if we go by the recently published study and break down the entire paper, it boils down to three key findings. One is that the findings go on to support the lunar magma ocean hypothesis, which is anyway the most widely accepted theory of how the moon was formed. Secondly, the findings have basically validated that the topsoil terrain around the landing site of Chandrayaan-3 is fairly uniform. That is, it is not an undulating surface. It's pretty flat, plain surface. And thirdly, the instrument, which is the alpha particle X-ray spectrometer or APXS, it picked up certain mixing of minerals, which the study goes on to propose could have been caused by an asteroid impact on the South Pole Aitken Basin, or what we know as SPA Basin, one of the largest and oldest basin on the moon. So these are more or less the three key findings, and the third and the first findings basically correlate and has a bigger significance overall.
Right. And can you describe to us the concept of the lunar magma ocean or the LMO hypothesis to understand the formation of the moon?
So moon is believed to have been formed as a result of a collision of a large sized asteroid with the Earth about say 4.2, 4.3 billion years ago. And in its initial years, decades rather, or more, the moon is supposed to have been entirely an ocean of magma. So say if you imagine a sphere, from the center till the surface, it was just a hot ball of liquid. And as it cooled down over millions of years, the heavier particles basically settled down. And if we go a bit more in detail, so as it cooled down over say millions of years, the heavier particles or minerals which form the rocks, say comprising of elements such as silicon and magnesium, these were forming the olivine and pyroxene rocks. So they basically sank, formed the inner layers, crystallized, solidified, and eventually the lighter minerals which comprise calcium and sodium based compounds, they floated to the top and then they solidified and they formed the outer layer. So yeah, that is broadly the LMO theory. And the theory was say proposed for the first time around in the 1970s. And this was soon after Apollo 11 mission of the US had brought back samples from the moon. So based on that, scientists back then had pushed this theory, and over the years, over multiple missions across multiple countries have gone on to validate this theory more or less.
And Sohini, do these findings validate the LMO hypothesis? And what do they say regarding the elemental composition of the moon's southern latitudes?
So yes, the latest findings from APXS goes on to validate this theory of LMO, and it also takes it a step forward. So even within the LMO theory, there are multiple models as to how the cooling happened and in what way the solidification or crystallization took place. So one of the models within this theory says that it happened layer by layer. That is a stratified crust formation is what they term it. So the APXS findings in the Nature journal, it takes this hypothesis a step forward, supporting this stratification of crust theory, where it is believed that the upper crust of the moon is primarily formed of iron-rich rocks and the lower crust is comprised magnesium-rich rocks. So what the study says is, in the stratified crust model, the upper crust is expected to be composed of about 80 to 90% of the lighter minerals that floated on the top surface. So as I said before, that would comprise your calcium and sodium based minerals when the magma cooled, and then the lower crust is expected to be composed of your magnesium rich minerals.
Right, and India is the first country to have landed near the south pole of the moon. So, could you tell us about the findings of the mission regarding the South Pole Aitken Basin?
Yes, the Indian mission of Chandrayaan-3 landed near the South Pole, and technically the landing spot was around 350 kilometers from one of the most significant crater or basin that we have on the moon, which is the South Aitken Pole Basin. And over there, one of the key findings is that the surface is uniform. So what the rover instrument, which is the APXS, did was it took measurements within a 50-meter radius from the landing site, took measurements at along 23 spots along the rover's path. So we have a good enough sample size here. And it goes on to say that basically, despite the rover covering different type of surfaces along this 23 spots, which included completely smooth surfaces to the areas near the rim of small craters. So as you would imagine, if it's a crater, the rims would be a bit rough on the edge. So the topsoil terrain, even there, it was fairly uniform, which is a first in terms of we are getting these kind of findings right from on the spot. It's not, I would say, not exactly a massive unknown, because this has again been theorized in the past based on other samples that have been taken from equatorial region, which has been the most common landing spot otherwise, equatorial and mid-latitude regions of the moon. But this is, of course, the first time when we are getting it right from the spots, which is why this becomes significant.
Right, and Sohini, what would you say is the significance of these findings?
So in terms of significance, now these findings become important because obviously these are from on the spot. So any evidence that you get from the spot has a very different weightage compared to, say, what you theorized or what you proposed based on, say, modeling or imaging, remote imaging, or from mathematical calculation based on samples from other areas of the moon. And secondly, because it goes on to validate what has been already proposed, it gives you more ground to plan or propose future missions, because basically it's what you theorized, what you proposed, what you thought would be the way it is. And when that is getting validated, it's a more concrete evidence or concrete base to lay your future missions accordingly.
Right. And Sohini, how do these initial findings by Chandrayaan-3 lay a foundation for future missions of lunar exploration?
So, firstly, the fact that the surface is smooth, it's not undulating. Say, for example, we don't have sort of tectonic plate movements like we do on Earth, which creates certain sort of undulations or certain sort of variation in your crust layering. It becomes a place, this landing site can be used as a place for calibrating your instruments, because for calibration you need ideal conditions. Also, the fact that it found mixing. The samples that were taken from near the landing site found mixing. The scientists have basically proposed that what could have happened is, look, here we have this massive basin. The SPA basin has a diameter of around 2,500 kilometers. That is a massive distance. We landed around 350 kilometers away, which is a fraction of that diameter. So what the scientists are proposing is the mixing of, say, the inner layers of the crust with the upper layer of the crust could have been a function of the impact of the asteroid, where basically an asteroid strikes, the inner ground material is thrown up and it mixes with the topsoil. So again, this lays the ground for exploration of this basin, because this basin could actually hold the key to a lot of questions that we have about the moon, about its formation.
And in the end, we talk about the Malayalam film industry. Yesterday, after the Kerala State Chalchitra Academy Chairman Ranjit and Actors Association General Secretary Siddiqui stepped down from their respective positions over allegations of sexual misconduct, actor Minu Muneer also alleged that she had faced sexual misconduct from various actors, including a two-time CPIM legislator in the Kerala Assembly. Indian Express's Shaju Philip reported that Muneer named actors Mukesh Jayasuriya, Manian Pillaraju and Idavela Babu, a prominent leader of the Association of Malayalam Movies Artists, also known as the AMMA. While Mukesh, Jayasuriya and Babu did not respond to Muneer's claims, Raju said he welcomes a probe into the allegations. Muneer told the media, quote, "I will file a complaint with the state police team which was assigned to look into the revelations which came up in the wake of the Hema Committee Report." Unquote. Shaju also reported that she even accused an actor of having tried to assault her at a hotel during the shooting of Calendar and Nadakame Ulakkam. She even accused a third actor of misconduct in 2008. She claimed, quote, "During a shooting in the state capital, when I was returning from a restroom, this actor caught me from behind and kissed. I pushed him down and ran away. He also invited me to his flat, and after I rejected the invitation, there was no issue from his side." Unquote. According to Shaju, Minu also claimed that in 2013, she had applied for a membership of the AMMA. She claimed that she had a similar experience there as well. She said that when she had called the designated person for the same, she was invited to his flat for filing the application. And while she was doing so, the person kissed her on her neck from behind. She fled the flat and didn't even get the membership. The actor said that she was forced to leave the Malayalam film industry and had to relocate to Chennai due to such experiences, and that she is now seeking justice and accountability for all her suffering and trauma. You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by me, Niharika Nanda. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.